Hello and welcome to Sport Unlocked on day 5 of Russia's war on Ukraine, the day Russia was banned from football. I'm Rob Harris from the Associated Press, and alongside me to discuss the moves FIFA, UEFA and the IOC have finally taken against Russia are Martin Ziegler from The Times and Tariq Panja from The New York Times. We'll get to how the decision-making unfolded in a moment, but first, Martin, how significant is it that FIFA and UEFA have suspended Russia's national teams and club sides for the indefinite future?
I mean, I think it's sort of unprecedented in many ways. Yeah, really sort of major development, and also, and not just FIFA and UEFA actually, but the International Olympic Committee, who, as far as I'm concerned, sort of forced FIFA into this action.
Tarek, does this definitely mean Russia will not play that World Cup qualifier against Poland next month and the 2018 hosts are completely out of 2022 contention?
Hard to say. I mean, at the moment, there's a war in Ukraine, and this action's been taken, as Martin said, is unprecedented. Russia is banned from football. However, Russia have been banned from all sorts of things before and are highly litigious. The Russian Football Union immediately said that it's going to have a sort of study of its legal options, and I can imagine us going to Russia going to CAS, trying to overturn this. And I must say, what is the rule book here? Because Russia have always got out through legal jurisprudence when it comes to sport. I don't see anything in the FIFA regulations or in the IOC regulations about this breach of its truce that seems to say you can ban Russia, or FIFA will say, all right, we don't care. And all the other countries in world football, so we also don't care. We're not going to play Russia. But legally, it's going to be really interesting what happens. I can't see Russia sort of taking it lying down.
I don't agree. Actually, I don't think they will challenge this in court. I think
They've already said
I
they
think it's
are.
almost between. No, they withhold they hold the right. They hold on to the right to do so. They've
Yeah.
not said that they
Why do you
will.
think they won't?
The fact they're going to be they'll be the sort of they're already the pariahs of the sporting world. If they actually become the pariahs on the public stage as well when they're playing these matches or whatever, these sporting events, I think that'll be even worse.
It is really significant what grounds Russia has been suspended from. We're used to FIFA suspending FAs. It happened last week even with Zimbabwe. That's often for things like government interference within the running of the association. But there isn't a clear statute, I would say, that references if a country goes to war, because it has the potential to create a precedent, doesn't it, in terms of other scenarios, in terms of military conflicts.
Well, guys, yeah, that's really kind of important as well because the precedent this kind of sets here. We talked about this at the weekend as well. United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia were dropping bombs on Yemen.
The UAE did abstain in the UN vote, didn't they, as well?
Yeah, if this isn't about an invasion, about human rights and the things that we've been talking about, is this now setting the stage for other nations to be banned? So far, sports, certainly the IOC, FIFA have resisted. This war in Europe has made them act. Now, if you are in the Middle East or other parts of the world, you'd be saying, "Hang on, we've got a couple of things we want to point out." What do you think this means?
I mean, it's not when you say it's setting a precedent. I mean, there is a
Which,
precedent
which is
from years ago, which is the former Yugoslavia.
Wasn't that country breaking
that
up?
was country breaking. It was a civil war that in Yugoslavia. You could
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
but
was
you
a
can
civil.
imagine the
There was,
Croatians and the Bosnians and the Serbs in that team saying, "All right, we'll go and play in the Euros. You lot."
no, but I'm saying there was no, but they were still UEFA still removed banned them from Europe, and they missed game to Euro '92. So I mean, it's I'm just saying if we're looking at sort of details of what the statute says and stuff like that. I mean, something like this has happened before with
Is it the
UEFA.
same? There was a UN resolution for Yugoslavia, if I remember correctly. There's been nothing from the United Nations. It's been blocked, hasn't it? Russia's in the Security Council. It is, you know, this horrific war that Russia has invaded. I'm just being devil's advocate here. It's disgusting. Some of the pictures we've seen is horrific, and it's unconscionable that Russia will be playing in these football matches. And I think most people would agree the decision that was taken today is the right one. But then you say Right, now where does world sport go?
All this came together in a space of a few hours on Monday, and it looked like sport was actually waiting for the IOC to take the lead, which actually hasn't happened very often on Russia, particularly not in recent years when we've had, the state-sponsored doping, where Russia has actually been pretty let off the hook at times by IOC. They've just dragged their feet and only introduced sort of partial measures, and many might have thought actually Russia should have been banned long ago for corrupting sport by using FSB agents to infiltrate labs at the Sochi Olympics and also conduct doping schemes across other events.
Well, I suppose it's easy for the IOC to say it doesn't have an event for another 2 years. It just finished the Beijing Olympics. But hang on, Martin, we were writing a different story last night. We were all there. Wait, the FIFA statement came out saying Russia is not banned. It will be playing on neutral territory with without its flag, without its anthem, without its name. 24 hours, less than 24 hours before this new punishment was meted out. Why did they do that? Russia had still invaded Ukraine. Russia is still invading Ukraine. What was the reason to issue that punishment, get all the flack, because they got a lot of flack, and then do this thing today? What was the point, Martin?
Well, I mean, I think go back a few more days, which I think we referred to in our previous pod, which was I was like staggered by the sort of the way Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, sort of referred to the situation on Thursday night when he said he was asked about the Russia Poland World Cup playoff, and he said, "Oh well, we're not going to make any decisions on that because hopefully the situation will be solved by then," or words to that effect. He used that phrase "solved," and I think that sort of that set the scene for FIFA that they were reluctant to do anything, and then, as you say, moved into this thing about playing on neutral ground, which, I mean, if anyone had any sort of insight into what was going to happen or what the Polish FA, the Swedes, and the Czechs were going to say, they would have known that was going to be a terrible, terrible PR blunder.
And UEFA would have known it straight away because the FIFA Bureau, for those who don't follow these things precisely, is made up of the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, and the 6 confederation presidents, of which one is Alexander Shefrin, the UEFA president. So he would surely have known that this was not going to be accepted by particularly the Poles, just playing a team that actually still had Russia in the name as Football Union of Russia and just not having a flag or an anthem. And, they criticised it almost immediately. And as we've seen consistently with that Infantino press conference on Thursday, desperate not to criticise Russia, it seems. Yes, the FIFA statement did condemn Russia's invasion, but seemingly still not wanting to offend Putin, not wanting to say he would hand back the Order of Friendship medal he got after the 2018 World Cup, and yet it rapidly changed by Monday. I think FIFA desperately, I think really hiding behind that bit of the statement from Sunday that said it would continue ongoing dialogue with the IOC and UEFA to determine additional measures or sanctions, including a potential exclusion from competitions that shall be applied in the near future should the situation not be improving rapidly.
What were they expecting Sunday night to Monday? I mean, we're not even talking 24 hours. The situation is exactly the same. Russia is doing horrific things in Ukraine. It was doing that on Sunday. Do you get the sense he might have been bounced into this, Gianni, in FIFA, because it just looks really weird. Like, why would you shoot yourself in the foot this way?
Well, I think he's been bounced into it by the IOC.
He's a member of the IOC, isn't he? Would he not? Would he not? Do these people not talk to each other? I know, like, they have these sort of set piece meetings. Is someone WhatsApping someone else saying, "What are you up to? By the way, what do you think we should do?" There's none of that happening.
Well, who knows? But I mean, yes, Rob mentioned that the UEFA president Alexander Sheffield is part of that FIFA bureau. I mean, I kind of get the impression that UEFA have been more than happy to sort of take the lead on things like stripping St. Petersburg of the Champions League final, and they were going to impose a ban on Russia today, and get rid of Gazprom, which we'll come on to again, and being seen as the sort of good guys compared to to FIFA, and it's probably worked for them.
And particularly as we're sort of noting how the actual level of criticism of Gianni Infantino has gone far beyond just those sports news insiders like us. It's really hit levels of hitting the public consciousness. You see on social media, general sports fans, his reputation seems to have really taken an even greater battering. It probably took its most significant hits around things like the biennial World Cup, which a lot of fans sort of saw through his bluster and attempts to sort of railroad that through, as it seems. But here we are, 6 years into his presidency, meant to be the great new hope after Sepp Blatter, yet he's been absolutely being derided and criticised far and wide across world football and beyond.
It's very significant news today, banning Russia from football, and there was no quotes. It was a statement from FIFA. There was nothing, no words from the FIFA president standing behind this decision or putting his name to it. I was quite surprised to not have any direct language from Gianni Infantino. So we almost don't know what he thinks. It might have even been a vote of that bureau. If it was like put your hands up, and he didn't want to, like 5 of the others did. Who knows? It's just so much uncertainty around what actually happened in that room.
I was told it was actually in writing that it was taking place. They weren't actually due to be speaking to actually it was just ratifying it in writing, the FIFA Bureau.
Right.
And actually, you're right, to look at that statement again, for such a landmark ruling from FIFA and UEFA, there isn't a word in it that says actually necessarily why it was taken. So we get a reference to the initial decisions taken, then we get informed what has been decided in terms of the suspension from FIFA and UEFA competitions until further notice. We get told who took the decisions, the FIFA Council Bureau and the UEFA Executive Committee. Then we get told that football is fully united and in full solidarity with all the people affected in Ukraine. Then it says both presidents hope the situation in Ukraine will improve significantly and rapidly so that football can again be a vector for unity and peace amongst the people. It doesn't make any plea, for instance, to Russia to stop the aggression, because this was an unprovoked war.
Yeah. Lots of stuff about vectors and unity.
The last time I heard about vector was during the coronavirus, like vectors of infection. And suddenly, it's now seeped into these two FIFA statements. I know they're spending a lot more on comms these days, Rob. So someone new might have been writing that press release.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a statement that wouldn't necessarily offend Vladimir Putin as some other ones might not do?
Well, it crossed my mind as well. Like, don't put your name to it. No one wants that. It's not me. It's the others. Vlad, we're still pals. I can't. I don't want to offend you. It does give you a sense that no one wants to kind of be the guy saying, "Look, Vladimir, in your face, you're out."
Because we did hear in that IOC statement earlier today, they said, based on the exceptional circumstances of the situation and the extremely grave violation of the Olympic truce and other violations of the Olympic Charter by the Russian government in the past, so that's a clear reference to the doping scandals, that the IOC Executive Board had taken the ad hoc decision to withdraw the Olympic order from the Russian government officials. They reference Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Shemchenko, and Dmitry Kozak, people we've come into contact with over the years.
Yeah, I actually thought that was a really, we've given the IC, plenty of batterings on this podcast in the past, but I thought it was a really, really good statement. I mean, it explained what the rationale for Russian athletes and teams being excluded from international competition, because Russia's actions have effectively prevented many Ukrainian athletes and teams from taking part in their competitions, and I thought that was a really good rationale and sort of really well worded, and good work by the IOC.
Good details there. You're right, but I spoke to another official from another governing body, and he said the IOC are really good at making rules when their event isn't happening.
Because actually the pressing matter is for the International Paralympic Committee. We record just a few days out from the opening ceremony of the Beijing Winter Games for them, and the IOC statement does give some leeway for Russians to compete as neutral still there.
Yeah, also the IPC, I understand, are terrified about their own rule book. They updated their statutes, and it says the IPC must be politically neutral as an organisation. Therefore, there isn't a rule that says a breach of this Olympic truce is a membership busting thing. So they're trawling through all their statutes to see if they can kick Russia and Belarus out. Because if there isn't a rule, they're really concerned that if it does go to the Court of Arbitration, Martin reckons it might not, any of this stuff, but if it does, they're scared that they're going to lose, and they're not rich. They're not the IOC, that they're going to get, punished for millions of dollars or pounds, whichever currency you like. So it's going to be quite tricky to kick them out. Meanwhile, 70 plus Russians are on their way to China.
And on the World Cup qualifier, now as it stands, Russia are suspended by FIFA. They can't qualify for the World Cup. They're due to play Poland in that World Cup qualifying playoff semi-final on March the 24th. As it stands now, Poland go through on a bye to play Sweden or the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I mean that's. I think that is what's going. I can't see anything stopping that, and Russia won't be at Qatar. That's for definite.
And then the looming matter of Russia's participation as well in the Women's Euros in England in July.
Yeah, the English FA hosting that tournament made it perfectly clear they didn't want Russia to be there. The opening match was against Switzerland. They said they didn't want to play Russia, and not surprisingly, UEFA have sort of taken the decision that they're also excluding Russia from any of their competitions. They've not said specifically who's going to replace Russia in that. They said that will be dealt with by the EXCO at a later date.
Martin, Rob, speaking of replacing Russians, what about these officials? We mentioned this guy, Alexander Zhukov from Gazprom, who sits on the UEFA Executive Committee. There's been no announcement whether he'll be gone, and FIFA has Alexei Sorokin on its FIFA Council, and there's other committees. What's happening to all the bigwigs? They haven't announced any of that.
Well, we'll have to try and scoop each other to try and get that first over the next few days.
Well, that's the big news. And there was one other part of the UEFA announcement too, which is the fact they've ended their sponsorship with Gazprom. We still saw the Champions League games last week. The Russian state-owned energy giant was there. They'd been in talks with lawyers trying to remove themselves from the deal, and that was announced today, as we actually heard from Schalke in Germany, ending their sponsorship with Gazprom.
It's a massive deal, isn't it, for UEFA financially? I've seen various sums quoted. I don't know myself specifically, but something in the region of between 40 to 60 million euros a year, which they didn't have any option, did they? Really?
It's massive, but it's also not massive as well in the grand scheme of like television money and bidding.
No, exactly. Compared to the 3.6 billion euros a year from TV money or whatever.
No, and it's not worth the headache if you think about it. It's more for me the politics of excluding Russia's energy giant. It's like another slap in the face for that country, isn't it? It's a national champion company.
There was perhaps some expectation earlier today that there might be peace on its way and brokered by a footballing figure, none more so than Roman Abramovich, according to some of the headlines. But actually, as we dissect the statement, it doesn't seem that necessarily is as clear as was made out. The statement from his spokeswoman saying that I can confirm that Roman Abramovich was contacted by the Ukrainian side for support in achieving a peaceful resolution and that he's been trying to help ever since. So, a lot to unpick from that. Ukrainian side, what does it mean? Some have maybe over-extrapolated.
Well, I mean, this also goes on to say that this is sort of corroborated by a Ukrainian film director. Now, no one I've ever heard of before. His name is Alexander Rodyansky, and he's apparently confirmed Abramovich's involvement. But how much he is the Ukrainian side, or it's just some bloke who Roman Abramovich happens to know, I'm not quite sure.
Can I just ask another question here? We had the weekend, lots to unpick with Roman Abramovich. We had briefings clearly from people close to Roman Abramovich to certain segments of the media saying that Roman Abramovich is not a political figure and is not close or connected to Vladimir Putin. Okay, so if you take that from the weekend, that he's not political and he's not close to the Russian government, Vladimir Putin. Why on earth, if they're saying that, would he have any influence in a highly political chat to sue for peace here on behalf of Ukraine, of those two countries with Russia? It just, and if he isn't, he has no place being there. It just reminded me of that situation when poor old Paul Gascoigne, when he was not feeling very well all those years ago, there was a hostage situation in Newcastle, and he showed up with a fishing rod, a hot chicken, and a can of beer. He was about as useful as him, probably, if he's not. And if he is highly political, if Abramovich is, why are they saying he's not?
Well, the statement was volunteered by Abramovich's side. It was put out there first, it looked like in the Jerusalem Post, and probably some of the media interpretation that might have actually over-egged how involved he might have been in the talks. Not discouraged in any way in terms of that. And of course, he's yet to condemn the Russian aggression in Ukraine. We did actually hear today from Lord Lebedev, the owner of the London Evening Standard, actually on the front page of that newspaper, the Russian oligarch owner of the paper, actually calling for Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine.
Abramovich's daughter has condemned it, but he hasn't himself. I mean, it does strike you this is another sort of PR move by Abramovich, similar to this sort of strange thing which emerged over the weekend about trying to pass the ownership of Chelsea onto the charitable foundation connected to the club, which is effectively just a sort of cosmetic move to try and avoid being sanctioned by the British government, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and Rob, you mentioned extrapolate with the last thing. People extrapolated that as well and took it to mean screaming headlines that Abramovich is leaving Chelsea, and it was, as Martin says, nothing of the like. He still owns it, no intention of selling it. We also don't know if it's possible, this maneuver to move the ownership into this trust, charitable trust. The Charity Commission has said it's looking into it. There is no guarantee that it will happen. Is that right?
Yeah, the key phrase in the statement from Abramovich on Saturday was that he was handing over the stewardship and care of the club to the trustees of the foundation. The lawyers I've spoken to say actually these words have no meaning within company law, but they're words that obviously allowed people to be able to read into it or see into it the fact that actually this was a significant end of Abramovich's ownership of the club, but actually the insistences from his side, he's not looking to sell up. And it's still vague, though, in terms of how removed he will be from the decision-making process, because it doesn't really make a commitment to withdraw from that. It just makes this reference to handing over the stewardship and care. And the chairman of the club is Bruce Buck. The chairman of the trustees of the foundation, Bruce Buck.
Emma Hayes, the women's managers on that board as well. It'd be a bit funny that she's running the club that is also employing her. That's an odd one, and the finance director. It's a whole funky setup.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a charitable foundation, and I mean, the Charity Commission has said it's. I mean, the phrase that it uses that it's contacted the foundation because it's received what it says a serious incident report around this, and I think certainly some of the independent trustees. I mean, they include Sir Hugh Robertson, the chairman of the British Olympic Association, Piora Power, a former guest on this programme, executive director of FAIR, and I think they're going to be in a very tricky situation if it goes anything beyond a charitable foundation. I think that they'll have to step down because it'll be conflicts of interest all round, and I'm sure if that the club tries to push ahead with that's what will happen.
Right, away from the charitable foundation, guys. What's the situation for Chelsea financially if Roman Abramovich has to go?
Well, £1.5 billion in loans to the club is put in 19 years. So that is a significant burden for any new owner to take on. It depends if he was to call them in and how his ownership might end if he wanted to.
I'm not even sure what would happen. Say he was sanctioned and his assets are frozen. I'm not even sure if he could sell the club because it's an asset, isn't it? So I think nothing is going to happen with Chelsea personally. I just think it will drift on. Maybe he'll be sanctioned and the club will continue operating without him able to put funds into it. I think that's probably the most likely.
Is that because of all the kind of upheaval with the fans and the disquiet that will cause. We've seen how the government is very sensitive to football.
Yeah, exactly.
And as things stand, as we end this episode, there's still been no word from Chelsea themselves saying what the new structure might look like. This was purely a statement from Abramovich himself that was published by Chelsea on Saturday. So nothing to confirm anything that has actually been enacted in terms of changes being approved.
No, there's only been that one statement, I think, Rob, from Chelsea Football Club, which I think was again wrongly attributed as a condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Chelsea said nothing of the like. They just said it was a terrible situation. I can't remember the exact words, and I'm sure most people agree it is a terrible situation. They didn't condemn the actions of Russia, though.
No, just to go back to the when this charitable foundation announcement was made on Saturday night. So, I mean, from what I understand, is Richard Masters, the Premier League chief executive, contacted Bruce Buck to ask him what this was, and was basically told, that there's no change of ownership, there's nothing to affect the owners and directors test, there's no change of control, and that probably tells you all you need to know.
God, just a last thing on this. For someone who was doing all this so he's not attracting attention, all of this has attracted even more attention to Abramovich, hasn't it?
Well, but it's meant to be like positive PR. I think that's the idea.
Oh, I see. Very positive.
And maybe he does become the person who ends the war. Who knows? Well, that brings an end to this special edition of Sport Unlocked on the day that Russia was suspended by FIFA and UEFA, and the IOC called on all sports to banish Russia. Martin, Tarek, great to be able to try to unpick all this with you.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. And thoughts to everyone affected by the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some better news about the conflict when we record again.
Thanks a lot, and thank you everyone for listening. Stay safe, and you can always message us at Sport Unlocked on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And particularly the person who did request, could we do another episode, especially to cover the breaking news today? But for now, goodbye.